So we want to go ahead and thank you all for coming to the June 2021 URESA Texas Speaker Series. We've got a great presentation today. The title is the FEMA's Resilience Analysis and Planning Tool, the RAPT. We have three great presenters here. We've got Benjamin Rance, we've got Carmela Birdie, and we've got Leslie Edgemont. And really appreciate you all agreeing to present at our speaker series. And this resilience, the RAPT tool, is an award-winning Geographic Information System, a GIS web map tool. And I will let them go ahead and explain it even more to you, but I think it's gonna be very useful. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to you, Benjamin. And again, thank you all for being here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brian. I really appreciate it. As was mentioned earlier, my name is Benjamin Rance. I am the project lead for the Resilience Analysis and Planning tool. We're going to be, looking at a couple slides today, and then we're going to take a look at the tool and kind of see an interactive demo and take a look at some specific areas in Texas. So really, thank you to everybody for joining us today. It's really an honor and privilege to, be here and kind of present to the group. And we're looking for any sort of feedback or, questions, comments, anything you might have. As was mentioned earlier, joining me today are a couple members of the RAPT team that are actually with the Argonne National Laboratory. Leslie Edgemont will be answering questions in the chat as we go along, so feel free to funnel all the questions through the chat and she'll be able to answer them. And we also have Carmi Birdie, who I will definitely admit is the brains behind the RAPT. She's our GIS specialist, and she's the one responsible for making the RAPT look like it looks today with all of the functionality. So I want to turn it over to Carmi really quickly to say a couple words before we get into the presentation.
Thanks, Ben. Hi, everyone. My name is Carmi Birdie. I am a senior GIS analyst at Argonne National Laboratory. I've been at the lab for almost 6 years now, but before that, I spent about 8 years at the county government level doing GIS, emergency planning, for both our emergency management office as well as our sheriff's office, and the stuff you do when you're at the county: tax, parcel maps, stormwater, all of that good stuff. So I have attended a few URESA meetings in Illinois and done some trainings in Indiana, so I'm super excited to be here today. If there are any technical questions about RAPT, if you want to put those in the chat or ask them now or at the end, we can talk about them. But what you're going to see and what Benjamin's going to show you is a web mapping application built through Esri. And so FEMA uses ArcGIS Online as their platform for web mapping. And so RAPT is an ArcGIS Online web mapping application with a number of different widgets and geoprocessing tools to make it easier for community managers and emergency managers to understand their community makeup and the resilience indicators that surround their population. So I'll stop there, but if there are any questions, technical questions, I'm here this whole time to answer those as well.
Thank you so much, Carmi. I really appreciate it. And as she mentioned, I love the fact that Carmi's with us. She's got a really great background in GIS and emergency management. So without any further ado, I think we're going to kind of get into the presentation. Again, we're talking about the Resilience Analysis and Planning tool. And just a couple quick overview points for those of you who might not be familiar with the tool. It is a publicly available GIS tool. It's free and available to anyone. There is no username or password required to use it. All you need is an internet connection and you'll be able to access the tool. All the information that you're going to see today in RAPT is publicly available. FEMA pulls this information from a number of different sources, and we're going to talk about that. And really what the RAPT does is it allows us a combined analysis of 3 different areas of information. We have 20 commonly used community resilience indicators. We have infrastructure data from the Homeland Infrastructure Foundation level data, or high field. And then we also have hazard layers, which includes historic data information, risk data, even some real-time severe weather forecasts. So combining those 3 data sets, along with our analysis tools and the ability of the user to add their own data layers to RAPT, is what we think makes RAPT special and hopefully beneficial for emergency managers and really anybody who just wants to learn a little bit more about their community in the field. So given the fact that I think a lot of us are, kind of focused on data and, really want to know where it comes from and kind of how we got to the point, I'm going to go over a little bit of how we got to the 20 community resilience indicators that are in RAPT. The 20 community resilience indicators come from a community resilience indicator analysis, which was a literature review of meta-analyses focused on community resilience. FEMA partnered with Argonne National Laboratories and performed this meta-analysis that was basically focusing on measuring resilience to disasters for literature published from 2013 to 2018. So they looked at this analysis and they found 73 distinct methodologies or indices. FEMA then developed and applied 6 different inclusion criteria, which you can see are in the upper right. Just a couple of them I wanted to point out is that we wanted the methodology and the data to be public, and we wanted it to be available at the county level in quantitative data. So after applying these 6 criteria that reduced the set of methodologies down to 8, you can actually see them listed there on the lower left-hand part of the screen. And then within these 8 different methodologies, there were over 100 unique community resilience indicators, because obviously there are a number of indicators that contribute to community resilience. So reviewing across those 8 methodologies, the research team basically selected those indicators that were cited in 3 or more of the 8 methodologies, because this indicated that there was some agreement amongst the researchers as to the importance of the indicator. So looking at it, all of those steps, that's how we got to the 20 commonly used community resilience indicators. And I mentioned, the indicators are just one aspect of the tool. You can see here we have all of our data sets. We have the community indicators. Oops, sorry, went back a little bit. We have the community indicators in the 2 left columns. You can see them listed right there. In our middle column, we have our infrastructure data as well. And then in the right column, we have all of our hazard data layers. And again, these are historic or real-time data layers. And then we also have estimated frequency layers that are pulled from the National Risk Index. So combining all of these 3, we get to the resilience analysis and planning tool. So I want to go into a demonstration, and I wanted to show this slide really quickly, just in case anybody wants to follow along. If you go to fema.gov/RAPT, you'll actually get to this next website that we're going to check out, which is the RAPT support website. So just wanted to show that to everybody. And then I'm going to pull up, you should be able to see the RAPT support website on my screen. Again, just wanted to point out a couple of the supporting documents that we have. We have a number of videos for the Resilience Analysis Planning Tool. We have a full webinar of about 50 minutes. We have a user guide. We have a document that includes all of the data layers and sources. So I recommend anybody who has more additional questions about that to take a look at the data layers and sources document. We've recorded about 10 how-to tutorial videos, which are located right here, which break down the tool into specific chunks and specific aspects. And I encourage everybody to look at those. And then if you go down to the bottom, we have the community resilience indicator analysis information, which includes the full community resilience indicator analysis report, a research summary, and a correlation analysis. So looking at the support website, you'll notice a bar at the top. This is how we access the resilience analysis and planning tool. And once we get to the tool, this is what you'll see. On the left sidebar, we have a couple things. We have some of the training resources, supporting documents, how-to tutorials. We have the data that's available for download. We have our indicator data available at the county, census tract, and tribal territories levels in the resilience analysis and planning tool. And at the very bottom, you'll see we have an inbox. It says FEMA-TA request at fema.dhs.gov. We're always, looking for feedback, comments, questions, concerns, anything you might have. So please feel free to reach out to us at that email address, and I'm sure Leslie will put it in the chat so everybody can have it as well. I'm just going to minimize this really quickly so we can take a look at the tool. You'll notice we have a number of tabs in the upper right, and we're going to go over those a little bit. The first tab I did want to show people is the FAQ tab, or the Frequently Asked Questions tab. It provides good information on the background, update frequency, and functionality of the tool. So I would say if you want to get into RAPT, make sure you go through and read that first. And then outside of that tab, you'll see we have our tabs for our infrastructure and hazard layers, and we have a number of tabs that relate to our indicator layers as well. So we're going to take a look at our indicators first. And I wanted to mention something really quickly. I mentioned we have county level, census tract, and tribal territories layers. For our county level tabs, when we go ahead and open this up, you can see we have information for all 20 community resilience indicators that we identified. For our census tract and our tribal territory layers, we only have information for 12 of these indicators. That's just because the information that we pull for these indicators is from the American Community Survey, and it's only available for 12 of our indicators at the census tract and at the tribal territory level. So obviously we want to focus a little bit on Texas. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit to the state so we can see most of it right here. And I want to show you some of our county level indicators just so you can kind of see the difference between the county level and the census tract level. Pretty basic. When we open our county indicators tab, we can see a number of them listed right here. And let's say we want to look at the percentage of the population with a disability. Clicking on any of these titles will give us the different bins. At the county level, all of our indicators are divided into 5 different bins, each one color coded according to the range that it shows right here in the legend. And when we toggle these on, you can see that our map then populates with each county corresponding to the bin that it falls within. So, we're looking at this visually. We can see there are obviously some pockets of, darker blue areas. Whenever you're looking at information in the RAPT, the darker colors will correlate to greater challenges to resiliency. For instance, you can see for the percentage of the population with a disability, the dark blue bins have a 21.6% to 37.49%, which is the highest value in our range. While we're looking at this indicator, if we click on one of our counties, we'll notice a pop-up box. This pop-up basically shows for this specific indicator, percentage of the population with a disability, what the value is. And it also shows what the national average is. So we can see it's about 12.6% nationally. And then you'll notice we have another tab. If we go to the other tab, we'll see the indicator information for all of the indicators available at the county level. So again, when we're looking at a specific indicator, we can get just that indicator information in this pop-up. And then on another tab in the pop-up, we have the indicator information for all 20 indicators. So this is really nice to provide a snapshot of a specific county or a specific area. So just wanted to show kind of what that looks like. Let's say we also wanted to look at, lack of health insurance. We can do that. We can see, that pretty much the whole entire state falls within these top 3 bins, which indicates greater challenges to resilience just in terms of the percentage of the population without health insurance. While we're looking at the county level, I also wanted to show another layer, which is just a lack of internet subscription. Again, we pull these layers from other sources. And so this one, you can see it's on a pink scale. And it's a little bit more difficult to see, but you can see the darker pink areas have, up for anywhere from 42 to 76% of the households that lack internet subscription. So you can see, in kind of Southwest Texas, some of these counties over here, we can see this one has 54% of the households without internet. And we can see that nationally, it's about 17%. So I'd just like to show this because I think it, it speaks a lot to how easy or difficult it can be to, reach out and keep everybody connected, especially given the last year we've had, with COVID and a lot of people working remotely. One of the things that we can do also is, we're looking at information at the county level, but we can also look at information at the census tract level. So if we click on our census tract indicators, you'll see our drop-down list. Again, we don't have as many indicators because we only have 12 of these available at the census tract level. But I just wanted to show you, let's say we wanted to look at the percentage of the population with a disability. We remember what it looked like before at the county level. And then when we toggle this on for the census tract level, you can really see a lot more granular view of the information at the census tract level. So much that I'm actually going to zoom in to Houston a little bit because, we can kind of see some of the larger census tracts out here. But really, in order to see just how granular of a view we can get, I'm going to zoom into downtown Houston. And you can actually see now at the census tract level, individual census tracts and how there seems to be, a pretty distinguished divide just within the city. Again, just like with our county level data, we're divided into bins. The census tract data is divided into 7 bins because obviously it allows us to see a little bit more variation in these small census tracts. And if we zoom in a little bit more, I'm actually going to click on one of these census tracts, and you'll actually see that just like with our county levels, it pops up and gives us the percentage of the population with a disability for this specific census tract. One of the things I also wanted to show, we've looked at, disability. Let's take a look at a lack of health insurance. That's another one that we actually looked at, at the county level, and we can see there's a very kind of distinct area, in downtown Houston where, there are certain census tracts that have lower values, other census tracts that have higher values. I think it really does a great job of showing the distinction. We've seen these layers kind of represented visually. We've seen them in pop-ups. I also wanted to show that we can see them in an attribute table as well. So, if we're looking at a pop-up, we have these 3 dots down here. We can actually view this in an attribute table. And then you'll see our attribute table opens up, and all of this information that we see listed here in the pop-up for our indicators at the census tract level is now listed here. And we can see it's the same information, just in tabular form. And one of the things I wanted to show is, if we wanted to look at, let's say, all of the census tracts within the state of Texas or within a specific county, we can actually look at that through the attribute table. So if I just, click on the black arrow at the bottom, it will pull up the attribute table from the bottom of the map. And what's happening now is it's showing me for all of the census tracts I can see on the map, which happens to be 472. It lists what the census tract is, what county it's in, and then it gives me the values for all of those census tracts, which is really interesting. And I think it's really helpful if you're, looking at, resilience or maybe challenges to community resilience. A couple of things we can do when we're actually in the attribute table. One is you'll see filter by map extent is toggled on. If I toggle that off, now I'm looking at all of the census tracts for the entire United States and territories. One of the things we can do is go to options instead of filter, right? So let's say I just want to look at the state of Texas. I can add an expression, and let's say I want the state name is obviously Texas. And if we hit OK, we'll see that now in our attribute table, we only have all of the census tracts within the state of Texas, which looks to be about 5,265 because we can see our features down here. Once we have, this listed, we have another option. We can actually export this to a CSV or a comma separated value file, and we can actually turn this into Excel. So once you take this information from the attribute table, if you put it into Excel, you can then easily sort by values for any of these columns, any of these, community resilience indicators. And you could focus on, let's say, I only want to focus on census tracts that have a percentage of the population with a disability over 15%. And then you could sort by that, and you could actually target specific census tracts based on this information that you could pull from this table. So I just wanted to show, basically the 3 different ways that we can see information here represented on the map. I'm going to toggle off some of these because I also want to take a look at some of the other data sets that we have in here. We mentioned our indicators, and I also want to talk about our infrastructure layers. So you can see up here we have our infrastructure tab, and it's pretty much the same idea. If you click on one of these infrastructures, you'll get the legend below. And when we toggle these different layers on, you can actually see them populate on the map. Again, this is something you could toggle multiple layers on at once. So you can take a look, for instance, where all the nursing homes and all the hospitals are, again, just focusing on the Houston area. If you click on one of these entities, you'll actually get a pop-up with the specific entity information. So if we're taking a look at this hospital, we can see the name of it, what type of hospital it is, how many beds it has, what its status is, trauma level, if it has a helipad or not, and it actually tells us where it is. And there's actually a link to the website for this infrastructure entity. Again, all of this information comes from the Homeland Infrastructure Foundation level data, or high field. So sometimes when you click on one of these infrastructure entities, you'll see not available or -999 for these values. That just means that the high field data set is incomplete. And if you do have, specific information about one of these entities in your local community, there's actually an FAQ up here that talks about how to submit data to Highfield so they can update it, since they own the layer, they own the data, and we don't. So we can take a look at this. When we toggle these layers on, we're actually toggling the layer on for the whole entire United States. So sometimes it might take a little bit to load, but you can toggle multiple on at once. Let's say we wanted to look at mobile home parks. We can do that and click on any of these entities and take a look at what they have there. So you can kind of see our infrastructure layer list. Again, it's listed here, and it's also in our data layers and sources document. So I would encourage everybody, to kind of take a look at that when they have a chance. And then our third set of data is our hazards. These hazards include information about historic hazard-specific risks, current watches and warnings, future outlooks. We also have real-time layers such as watches and warnings. We have severe weather, river flooding. Currently, right now, the real-time weather layers we pull from the National Weather Service, and the National Weather Service is updating their layers, so they're not loading on our map right now, again, because we're pulling them from the NWS. But you can see here we have our real-time weather radar. I checked earlier, there's not much weather going on in Texas. Apparently, it's just awfully hot there from what I hear from everybody on the call. But you can take a look at our real-time weather. We also have, as I mentioned earlier, we have 15 annualized frequency of natural hazard layers from the NRI, or the National Risk Index. I just want to zoom out a little bit so we can see, again, for the whole state of Texas. The NRI allows us to basically take a look on a national level at certain specific annualized frequency data for hazards. So if we toggle this on, and let's say, we wanted to take a look at heat wave. When we open up heat wave, we'll see a legend that will appear below, and it will show us on the county level how many event days per year would be forecasted, or the annualized frequency of this natural hazard. Again, this information comes from the National Risk Index, and we've worked with them pretty closely to kind of include this information. And you can see the information here, and if we click on one of these counties, it actually gives us, for this specific county, what the frequency is. So again, this is event days per year based on the National Risk Index. It gives us kind of a definition of what the heat wave is. I think one interesting to look at is, let's say we wanted to take a look at hail. We can take a look, and obviously you can see that there are a number of counties in northern Texas where, if we click on them, have a pretty high value for event days per year. For instance, in this county, we have about 24.04. So again, this doesn't necessarily tell you when it's exactly going to happen or when it is happening, but it gives you, from a national perspective or even a statewide perspective, a great idea on certain areas that are more at risk for these annualized frequency of natural hazard events. So just wanted to point that out while we're still zoomed out a little bit. Another one we have, I mentioned some historical layers. We have historical tornado tracks. We can turn that on and see those throughout the state. And we also have historical hurricane tracks since 1980. So we can obviously see some of those. I'm sure you're all very familiar with those and where they went. So one of the great aspects of RAPT is that we're able to see multiple layers on at once. So I'm actually going to do that, and I'm going to zoom back into the Houston area, just because I think it gives us a really great example of what we're looking at. And as I zoom into downtown Houston, I wanted to point out another hazard layer that we have, which is the flood hazard zones. Expanding on the flood hazard zones, we can see that we have everything from a 1 every 100-year flood, 1 every 500-year flood. And you can kind of see how the map changes, and you can see specifically where these different areas are on the map. So, now that we have the flood hazard layer on, let's add some infrastructure in here. So I think this is really when you get into the usefulness and really the benefit of the RAPT. We can toggle on different hospitals and nursing homes, and we can see that within our different flood hazard zones, we have a hospital, and it looks like 2 or 3 nursing homes in this area. I just focus on this area in Northeast Houston, just to kind of, give a little visual demonstration of what we're looking at. So, while we're looking at hazard layer as a flood, infrastructure layer for hospitals and nursing homes, we can also toggle on different indicators. So let's say we wanted to take a look at, okay, what do these census tracts look like in terms of individuals with a disability? We can actually take our percentage of the population with a disability, toggle that on, and I'm going to adjust the transparency just a little bit so we can see through it a little bit more to see the flood hazard zones. But when we do that, you can see that we have dark blue in all of these census tracts over here that overlap right with this flood area that we're taking a look at here in the northeast corner. So again, I think it's really neat to take a look at the interplay of all of these 3 different data sets. You can, from an emergency management perspective, you can really see how that might be beneficial to know. So now that we've seen the RAPT with multiple different layers toggled on, I want to take a look at some of the analysis tools we have. So I'm actually just going to, turn off our indicator layer, and I'm going to turn off our hazard and infrastructure layer as well. So we're just going to turn these off. And again, we can toggle these on and off just pretty easy, just by clicking on their tabs up here and toggling them off. One of the tools I'm going to look at is our incident analysis tool. So, we looked at historical tornado tracks earlier, but I'm going to toggle this on, and you'll see that there was actually a historical tornado that looks like it went right through downtown Houston. By clicking on it, we can actually see when it was. It looks like it happened in 1970, and you can see some information for that. But as we're looking at that, I wanted to take a look at the incident analysis tool, which is located here in the upper right. You can see it's a little triangle with an exclamation point in it. And when we click on that, we'll see the tool open down below. And this tool actually draws a radius for an event or a buffer zone for like a moving storm, like a tornado, and includes specific infrastructure entities in it. So let's say that we wanted our buffer to be 2 miles. And I'm going to draw a straight line, saying, okay, if, for instance, this exact same tornado went through downtown Houston today, we can see where it would go. We can see what our buffer zone is to see, what the affected area might be. And then you'll notice we have some infrastructure layers located on the bottom here. They're listed. If I click on hospitals, this will actually select all of the hospitals that are within this buffer zone. So you can see there are about, 26 hospitals, some of them located right almost on the line of where this tornado would move through. And we can see them listed right here. So we have all 26 listed. We can see them. Again, by clicking on them, it's the same as when we looked at our infrastructure entity information. We can see the name, how many beds they have, what the status is. And then you can actually take this information, just like we did with our previous layers, and we can download it to a CSV or export it to Excel. So you can clearly see, all of these entities that would be affected by this storm. Let's say we wanted to look at nursing homes. We can see they're a little bit more spread out all the way from north to south, but there are a couple that seem to be right on our path of where our tornado would be. Again, we can take a look at mobile home parks. We can take a look at public schools. I think this is, really great, when we're talking about evacuation planning and maybe how it could help evacuate, hospitals, nursing homes, or public schools. So this is, just one of the tools that we have to take a look at different infrastructure entities. So I wanted to show this tool really quickly. Again, if we remove this, and let's say we had a single point, and we're going to need to evacuate everything within a 3-mile radius from this single point. And let's just say it's at the intersection of this highway right here. It does the exact same thing, draws our point, and then we can again go through and take a look at all the hospitals and nursing homes, public schools, and infrastructure entities that are within that area. So we can do a single point, a straight line, or even a polygon if you wanted. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and I'm actually going to turn this historical tornado layer off, because I want to take a look at another one of the infrastructure or another one of the analysis tools that we have. I'm going to turn our flood hazard zone layer back on, just so we can see this. And remember, in this upper right here, there was a flood hazard zone that was pretty blue and orange, and we looked at a couple hospitals and nursing homes that were in this area. So once that loads, we're going to take a look at our Summarize Selected Indicators tool. And this tool basically summarizes the number of individuals with a specific indicator characteristic in a certain area. So again, I remember, it was kind of this triangle area. Our flood hazard zone is loading. Again, this is loading for the entire United States, so it does take a little while to load. But once it does, we'll see that up in this kind of northeast area, we'll see that here it is, that it's blue and orange. When we click on our Summarize Selected Indicator tool, basically what it allows us to do is select a certain area via a shape. So let's say we want to take a look at a polygon. And I am looking specifically in this flood hazard zone. Again, my art is not the greatest, and I'm just going to try to stay within this zone. So this is going to select all of the census tracts that are within and touching this area that we selected. And I want to take a look at how many individuals have a disability. So we'll click on Run. And again, the difference between this and the indicator data that we looked at earlier is the indicator data told us the percentage of individuals with a disability, right? So it says, 12% in this census tract have a disability. What this tool does is it will actually do the calculation and say, out of all of these census tracts that we're going to select, give me an approximation of the number of individuals. So not a percentage, but the number of individuals with a disability. So you can see that we can see our area that we drew right here. We see all of the census tracts that we selected in this area, which are in the flood hazard zone. And we can see that for this area, there's around 4,700 individuals with a disability. And again, we can click on these three dots. We can export this list of census tracts to a CSV file, to Excel. We can view just these census tracts in an attribute table if we want. We can again see how it overlaps with all of this blue that's popping up underneath. This is our flood hazard zone right here. So we can take a look and see some really important population demographics. For instance, if I go back to our input and I want to leave the same area, but I want to know how many individuals lack access to a vehicle. Obviously, if we're thinking of a flood scenario and we're saying, okay, we want to focus on evacuation priorities, what does that look like, and how many individuals might we need to move, maybe who lack access to a vehicle? So again, once this goes through and calculates, it'll give us a number. It'll be a little bit different. Oh, sorry. I think I need to actually draw the tool again. Sorry about that. But it would give us a number for the specific, number of individuals that lack access to a vehicle. So just wanted to put that out there. One of the things that we can do also is, while we're looking at this and while, let's say, we have our area drawn here, we can actually take a look at some of the infrastructure entities that are in this area as well. So we're taking a look at, this area. It'll tell us the number of individuals, which right down here it says 3,484 that are in the census tracts. We can actually go to our infrastructure layer, and again, we can say, all right, well, where are the hospitals and where are the nursing homes? We can see where they're located within this flood hazard zone. So again, not only can we see the interplay of, let's say, specific indicators and hazards and infrastructure, we can actually see the interplay between our analysis tools as well. So I'm going to turn off our flood hazard zone, and I'm going to zoom out just a little bit, because I mentioned previously that we can add data to RAPT. So I'm going to look at how to do that before we go into a couple other tools and then turn it over for the Q&A. Our add data function is located up here in the upper right. We can simply add data. It allows us to add data to the map by searching for layers in ArcGIS Online, entering URLs, or even uploading local files. So if you happen to have a local land use plan or maybe a specific local COVID data set that you want to add, you can do that. So you can temporarily add these layers and remove these layers from the map, but the layers cannot be saved to the map. So once you refresh your browser, the layer that you've added will be removed, and you'll just start with the default RAPT layers. So since we mentioned broadband earlier, I wanted to actually take a look at another publicly available layer that is available at the census tract level for internet access. So if I just type in internet access into the chat or into the search bar, we'll see a number of different layers that actually break down internet access by a number of different variables. There's one by education, age and race. There's one by labor force, income. I just want to do internet by connectivity. So if I just add this layer really quickly, you'll actually see it populate again at the census tract level. Again, I think it's pretty clear. You can see a huge divide in downtown Houston. And if we click on one of these, let's say one of these lighter colored census tracts over here, we can see that in the whole census tract, only 24 households have no internet connection, which is about 3.5%. So if you go down here, we have, the number of households who do have broadband, households with access but without a subscription, and then households with no internet access. So we can see there's only 24 here. And then let's say if we go over here to one of these census tracts, we can see it's, 348 households, which is about 41.1%. And again, this is all publicly available information that comes from the American Community Survey and was very easy to add to our map. So again, with this layer on, we can use our incident analysis tools. We could turn on our infrastructure layers. We can really take a look at any of the information within RAPT while this is also on. So just wanted to show that really quickly how easy it is. And then again, if we just hit remove, it just removes the layer for us. Here you have a URL. If you have a specific URL you want to add, you can do that. And here we have the file tab within the add data tool. And so you can see the types of files that we can add. So I'm just going to take a look at a couple other things, and I want to zoom out a little bit because I know we've been focused on Houston a lot. So let's look at San Antonio. I just want to take a look at this area really quickly. And let's say we're looking at San Antonio, and I want to show us like a couple other tools that we have. Some of the tools that we have are query tools. They're up here in the upper left. We can actually see query. And we can query census tracts by state or county, and we can query hospitals by trauma level. So let's just do census tracts by state or county. And let's say we want our state name, obviously, is going to be Texas. And I believe San Antonio is in, let's see, where is it? Bexar County. And if we hit apply, we'll see that our query tool will actually select all of the census tracts within this county, within the state of Texas. You can see them visualized on the map. We can see there are about 366 of them. And for every one of the census tracts, just like with our pop-up information that we had, it lists all of the 12 indicators for that census tract and the values. So we can go through, we can scroll, take a look at all of our census tracts. And anytime you see these three dots right here, that pretty much means you can export this to an Excel file. You can view it in the attribute table. There's a lot of different ways you can look at it. So just wanted to show, that tool really quickly. I'm going to remove this and then go back to the other task. Again, we can query hospitals by trauma level. Again, enter our state, enter our trauma level, enter our specific county if you want, and we'll actually show the specific hospital entities in there as well. But it's pretty much the same tool. It just looks at a different piece of information. And then there's another tool that I want to show us, which is the selection tool. And this will be the last one that I show you today before we get to Q&A time. The selection tool allows us to select different infrastructure, census tracts, or counties within a specific area. So in order for this tool to work, we have to actually turn our infrastructure on. So again, let's say I want to look at hospitals, mobile home parks, and public schools. I always like looking at these because you can see that there are a number of these entities, in, the San Antonio area. And let's say I want to know within this greater San Antonio area, the exact number of these entities that are here. Well, if I click on my selection tool, I can actually see, okay, I want to look at hospitals, mobile home parks, and public schools. And I want to select this area with a polygon. So again, this is going to be a very rough selection of this. I'm just going to go like this. And let's say this is our area. When I double click, you'll see all of the entities that were within the area that I selected are now purple. And you can see on our list over here, it actually has a number. So within that area that I selected, there are 37 hospitals. It looks like there are 57 mobile home parks and over 370 public schools. If I want to know where these hospitals are and what they are, I click on the name and I have a list of all 37 hospitals. Again, just like with our infrastructure information we saw earlier, I can click on this name. It will actually show me the pop-up. It shows me where it is, the number of beds, all the information we have earlier. And again, with these three dots, I can export just this hospital information to Excel. I can view just this information in the attribute table, or I can actually do that from this main list if I wanted to export all the list of 37 hospitals to Excel, or just view this list of 37 hospitals in the attribute table. You can see I can do that, and they're all listed right here. So really great use of this tool. Another thing you can do, and I just got to turn on our census tract layer for that, is you can actually use this tool to look at the total population as well. So let's say, we're looking at specifically, just downtown San Antonio, right? I don't want to look at the entire city. And I want to say, all right, well, how many, infrastructure entities and what's the population within this specific area? Again, this is a very rough estimate. well, let's say I have this area. That's what I want to look at. You can see not only does it select our infrastructure entities, it selects all of the census tracts. And we can see that there are approximately 59 census tracts. We can scroll up, we can see 6 hospitals, 1 mobile home park, 90 public schools. And then within all of these census tracts, we can click on this tool, which is the population by census tract, and it tells us what the population is, 231,000. So again, that was kind of a very brief overview of, kind of the different tools and the different information in that. But I just wanted to, show that. I know we got about 10 or 15 minutes. I want to make sure we have time for question and answer at the end. So I'm gonna clear off this result. I'm actually gonna go back to our presentation, and I wanted to show just one last slide that I think, kind of talks about the benefits of RAPT. Again, it is free to use. All the data that you saw today is publicly available. You can access the RAPT via smartphone, tablet, desktop, laptop, pretty much anything that has access to the internet. And we really think that it allows you to see the connection of the 3 different data sets, the population characteristics, the infrastructure, and the hazards. The census tract level demographics are really great to really dive down and see within like an urban area what the differences are. You could see like just in downtown Houston, there were huge differences when we looked at, a lack of health insurance or internet subscription. You could see a big divide in the city. You can see our analysis tools, kind of how you can look at either infrastructure or population characteristics. We have real-time analysis thanks to our severe weather information. And then, we use it to kind of help us prioritize different areas for either community outreach or, community resilience activities. So I wanted to turn it over. I know I'm sure Leslie has had a good time answering questions in the chat, but I just wanted to turn it over to Leslie to see if there are any questions maybe that we want to discuss out loud, or if there's anything else in the tool that would be beneficial for me to show to everybody.
So just looking back through the questions, one note that the town that is spelled B-E-X-A-R is actually pronounced Bear. I did not know that.
You can tell I'm not from Texas. They'd run me out of town if I said it like that again. My apologies to anybody who's from the county of Bear.
I think we answered the questions through the chat pretty well. Just the general questions about which layers do we have for which topics. So I pointed a lot of those out. Someone was asking about data available outside the US. So we're currently only data within the US because of FEMA's jurisdictions. And let's see.
I know Brian and Ali had mentioned, potentially reading the questions out loud. I guess, Ali, I'll turn it over to you and Brian now. I don't know if you want to, open the floor for questions and answer, if people want to unmute or however you want to run it, but I'm going to turn it over to you to see what you want to do with the last 10 minutes.
That's fine.
Sure.
I was going through the participants, and it looks like most everybody is calling in from their PC. So, Leslie, I think you did a good job on answering the questions. If you do have any questions, go ahead and type them to us now.
Yeah. Hi, this is Carmi. I see one question in the chat from Marcus. He asks, did you use custom widgets or are they off-the-shelf ones? And so we used a combo, Marcus. So we did use a lot of off-the-shelf AGOL widgets within FEMA.maps, which is where RAPT lives. However, we did do one geoprocessing custom task, and that was the summarized selected indicators widget that Benjamin showed. And that's just doing some back-end calculations. And that is something we wrote up at Argonne and then are feeding through to FEMA's AGOL.
Okay. Well, we get a lot of excellence and very useful tool. And so we definitely appreciate y'all presenting. We still have plenty of time here if anybody wants to ask the team, the RAPT team from FEMA, some more questions. If you do think of some questions afterwards, then by all means, send them to URS of Texas. And Ollie had posted the email earlier, and we'll pass them along to the team. So I think there's another question there.
Yeah, I see Amy asks how to tell the date of the tornado tracks. So Benjamin, can you bring up a tornado track and show how to get the details on it?
Yeah, for sure, I can do that. I was just doing the summary selected indicators really quickly, but I think we'll exit out of that. I don't know if it'll pop up for us right now, but so if we turn on our historical tornado tracks, let's say we toggle those on, and we can see it seems like there's one going right here, kind of right here. If we actually, all I'm doing is clicking on that blue line. If I can zoom in just a little bit closer, if you click on the actual entity, you'll see that it's highlighted in kind of neon blue, and then you have a pop-up for it. So we can see that it's, the historical tornado track. This is, 1970. This is the year, this is the month, and this is the date. So it looks like May 14th, 1970, the time. You can see the magnitude, the number of injuries, the number of fatalities as well. So you can actually see a lot of the information here.
Is there a way to know when that layer was last modified?
Question.
Yes, if you look in our data layers and sources document, for each of our layers, it will show when they were last updated. And you can also go, if we go to description, like if we go to historical tornado tracks, it actually opens up, and this is the information of where we're pulling the layer. So you could see that from here, or how to get in contact with the owner of the layer.
Thank you.
No problem.
I do have a question. Following up on the updating, is there some sort of like updating maintenance schedule for, like some of these tend to maybe need to be updated more frequently than others?
Yeah, that's a great question. So again, with a lot of the layers, for instance, like the infrastructure layers, those are updated and those are owned by Highfield. So they're updated whenever Highfield updates them. Again, all of the most recent updated information is located in the data layers and sources document. We at FEMA have been updating RAPT itself as a tool about on a yearly basis. And we also try to update all of our indicator information as soon as the ACS, the American Community Survey, comes out with additional information. So for instance, the information we're looking at here today, like population age 65 and over, these are 5-year averages. So based on the years 2015 to 2019, that's how we get to the value that we have right here. Once the ACS releases their 2020 information, which will likely be at the beginning of 2022, we'll go through and then again update the indicator information so it will be the most recent, and the 5-year average will be 2016 to 2020. They had just released their 2019 data. It was probably like February or March of this year. So that's when Carmi and her team went through and updated all of these different census tracts. So it's the most current information for the indicators.
Okay.
And we've got another one in the chat from Sherry just asking if she's not familiar with emergency management, but she's been asked to assist with a hazard mitigation action plan. And how would RAPT be useful for that?
I think that's a great question. I mean, that's kind of, what we're hoping to, hear feedback from people who have used RAPT before. Obviously, for hazard mitigation, I think it's important to know, information about your kind of baseline population demographics. And I think this can really be helpful in doing that. If you're looking at, the, number of infrastructure entities that are located within potential flood zones, the RAPT can show you that. If you want to know, okay, within those flood zones, how many individuals do we think have a disability, or how many individuals don't have access to a vehicle? Those are all things that you can try to get an estimate of using RAPT. I think really what we want to do is, kind of put the most important information in the tool. And we're really open to receiving feedback on actually how users in the field are benefiting from RAPT and how they're using it. So if that's something that you end up doing and it does end up helping you with your hazard mitigation plans, then I would definitely recommend, reaching out to us and letting us know that, because we're always open to feedback. I will say one of the things that I think is really great about the RAPT team and everybody who's worked on this, including, Carmi and Leslie, is, we're always open for feedback. And the reason we're here right now with the incident analysis tools and the information we have is because of feedback from users like everybody on this call. We really value it. We really appreciate it. And so the more feedback we can get, the better.
Yeah, I definitely can see this tool, Benjamin, the RAPT tool versus the emergency management classes that FEMA already offers through their education program. You can take those. I've taken quite a few of those over the years, and I can see where the combination would go together.
Definitely. If any other questions, we're definitely open to them. Feel free to, put them in the chat. I can, walk through and show show aspects of this tool again. If anybody wants to see anything again or another tool, just let us know, as we have about 5 more minutes.
Okay. I was getting a lot of positive response in the chat window here. A lot of people are pretty happy.
I'm glad to hear that people are looking at making sure they're on a emergency grid from now on after this past winter.
Yeah, we got hit pretty hard here in Texas.
Yeah.
So, well, it looks like we're not getting too many more questions here. So maybe, oh, here we go. Donna has one.
Yeah. Can you show us how to submit info? I'm looking at my county, north of Bexar County, and our hospitals and fire stations are all missing.
Yeah, definitely, we can do that. North of Bexar County. So let's say you're looking at that, right? And we're a county up here. In our FAQ, we actually have information about all, where does the data come from, how to use the tool. And there's actually one of these FAQs that says, I know that right here, how can I get incorrect or missing information on an infrastructure location? So we see, comes from Highfield, they own it, but we have an email address right here where you can submit that information.
Nice.
And
we've actually been working with the Highfield team. I was just saying, we've worked with the Highfield team, and they've actually said, they appreciate it when people do submit that kind of those updates and that information. So we've worked with them closely, and we think this is probably the best way, since we don't own the layer. We're not in charge of updating that.
All right. And then Amy asks, you offer training for non-GIS users. I'm thinking of our EOC staff.
That is a great question. I consider myself a non-GIS user. I don't have a background in GIS outside of a couple courses I took in college. And so really what we've done is, on the RAPT website, again, FEMA.gov/RAPT, we put a lot of the supporting documents and resources here. So for instance, the webinar right here is about 50 minutes long, and it goes through everything we did today. And I walk through step by step, like how to do that. We have a user guide, which describes how to use all of RAPT's functions. It actually has visuals for screenshots. Click this button here, then click on this area, then select your area, and then click run. I mean, it's really like a 20-some page guide. If you want something printed off where you can take notes on, I would highly recommend the user guide. And then all of the how-to tutorials, again, these are anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes. And we talk about the specific things we mentioned today, right? So here's how to turn on your indicator layers. Here's how to view information in the attribute table. This video talks about just specifically the infrastructure layers. This video talks just about the hazard layers. So all of the things that we looked at today are broken down into specific how-to videos. So I would encourage anybody who wants to, learn more about it, but maybe isn't as GIS inclined, to really take a look at the supporting documents and resources we have on the RAPT support website.
Perfect. And I think, Pamela, did that also answer your question as well? I think we got two birds with one stone there.
Well, at any rate, I think it did. Yes, she says yes.
Yes. Okay.
Well, we're pretty much at the end here, and Benjamin, Carmela, and Leslie, we really appreciate y'all giving us this amazing presentation. Ollie, I think I glanced up and saw like 103 or so.
Yeah.
I can't, which is a great turnout. Want you all to come back and join us for our July Eureka Texas Speaker Series. Don't forget, go to our website and there is a scholarship. Ollie?
Yeah. Scholarship, the applications are due July 9th. So that date is coming up pretty quick. So if anyone knows anyone who's still in school, or if you're taking continuing education classes, we've got everything on the website for who can qualify, but please send that out to as many people as we can. We would love to, we really, really want the scholarship to flourish and help as many people as possible.
Okay. Well, we're going to give you all your time back. And again, RAPT team, we definitely appreciate it. And we'll sure be reaching out to y'all in the future again at some point. So definitely appreciate it.
No, thank you. It's been a great, and like I said, we're always open for questions, comments, feedback. So thank you very much for the opportunity. I think it went really well.
Okay, it's 1 o'clock. We'll go ahead and end this thing. We will be posting this to our YouTube channel shortly once we get it downloaded and cleaned up. And again, we'll see you all in July. And I'm Brian King, and my co-host has been Ollie Powers. So we'll see you all in a month.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.